Okay, fantastic. Hello, thank you to everyone who is sticking around for our last talk. Thank you very much, Mark, for organizing and also for arranging it so that I'm still able to participate. It's just past 9 in the morning here, so I really appreciate still being able to come along. So we are going to get started then. Just a brief overview of what we are going to talk about today. I'm going to do some quick introductions. Then we're going to talk about kind of two short preliminary analyses that we've done with the data that we have, and some brief comments on future directions based on what we've learned so far. So just introducing us very quickly, my name is Jennifer Mankin. I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Sussex. I primarily work for the research methods teaching team. And presenting with me today is Luise. She is a placement student who's been working with me this past year. I say working with me. She's actually done a good portion, probably more than 50% of the work on this project. So she's done an absolutely fantastic job. And so she's here presenting with me to share the work that we have done together. So she will present an analysis she's been working on a little later on. I'm first going to talk about what our project is and then give you some stuff that I've been working on. So this is just a brief introduction, brief overview of what the R teaching provision looks like at the University of Sussex. We have large cohorts of 550 plus. They're ticking up a little bit every year in each year of undergraduate study. Our switch to R in undergraduate teaching happened in 2019, which was fantastic timing. The pandemic hit right during the sort of midway through the spring term of our first year teaching arts. We had brand new modules, brand new everything, and then we were also trying to panic switch to online teaching partway through, which went beautifully. So our teaching now is a combination of R and statistics across 4 core modules in the first 2 years of study. We teach, of course, data wrangling, visualization, analysis, all within a tidyverse framework. Our teaching is delivered via a number of sessions, lectures, skills labs, which are mostly kind of live coding in lecture theater, and practical classes where we have weekly quizzes that are based on sort of independent study tutorials. So hopefully that will just give you some context for sort of what we are working on. So the SCALES is the project that we are talking about today, which stands for the Statistics and Coding Attitudes and Learning Experience Survey, which is one of the many things that I can credit to Luise, because my original acronym was SMARM. So we are making progress. So I will tell you a little bit about this study. So like I said, we have cohorts of about 550 students, and increasingly, especially kind of this last year, but one of the challenges that we are facing is that we have quite a lot of contact with the students who are most engaged, most enthusiastic, kind of participating regularly, and quite a lot of contact with students who are very anxious or very behind or really struggling. And so the kind of key question for me is, what is going on with the rest of our students, with that silent majority in sort of the middle who are kind of doing okay? What's happening with them? Because they don't usually ask for help. They may not even attend their sessions because they, sort of watch the lecture recordings, they do the worksheets, and they just never have any contact with us. So part of the main motivation of this study is, what is it that is happening with those students who are we don't have very much contact with? So the design of this study, this is our first year running it, but as we'll talk about a little later on, we are intending it to be a sort of running annual thing that we do every year to track our students kind of through their degree. So the design is sort of a large questionnaire that we give at 3 time points. So at the beginning of the year, sort of at the midpoint, so at the beginning of the second term, and then towards the end of the second term, just before we finish up. So they're short questionnaires because we have a weekly quiz structure where students need to take a short quiz. We've just replaced one of the quizzes with the questionnaire completion. So if they complete it, they just get all the way through it, and they pass a few attention checks to make sure that they are reading the questions, then they get 100% for that weekly quiz score. sort of regardless of whether they consent to share their data with us or not, they still get credit for completing it. So as you can tell from the name, our focus is on attitudes towards statistics and coding. So that's sort of our main focus here. I'm just going to show you a very busy slide that summarizes sort of all of the different measures that we've put into this study. Not all of them appear at every time point necessarily, but as you can see, we've got some general demographics, including generalized anxiety, some attitudes towards statistics, some attitudes towards coding scales, and then some academic measures. So we also asked them for permission to match up their responses with their marks in different aspects of the methods modules. And we also have some measures of attainment and engagement and that sort of thing. Okay, so that's sort of the general picture of what it is that we are doing. I'm going to talk now, kind of give you the first of two analyses. So as you can imagine, we are doing this across first and second years. We've done it 3 times, so we are currently sort of wading through mountains of data. So we are still in the process of organizing everything and processing everything and getting our heads around what we have. But we have a couple of sort of interesting preliminary things that we've been working on to kind of get to grips with this massive data set that we have. So this first one, I was really interested in a particular question that we asked in our questionnaire. So this is an investigation of responses to an open question about what students' goals are for their methods module. So whichever module they are currently beginning, what goals do they have for that module? So I had a look at a random subset of 70% of responses. So students who completed the questionnaire in both the first and second rounds of testing. And so that was a little over 200 in each group. And they were coded by me just for the main sort of topics that came up in those responses. It's a fairly informal coding sort of system, but I just wanted to get an idea of what sort of responses we were getting. So the question text that they are responding to was this: what are your goals for your current research methods module? In other words, what do you hope to learn or accomplish? So this was the open question text that these students were responding to, and they could write whatever they want, however long they wanted to write. So again, a very busy slide that I'm not going to read out in full, but based on my coding system, basically 4 sort of really key themes came out of that. So academic, affective, having to do with kind of emotions or difficulties, applied, so doing things outside of just the academic context, but kind of beyond into other contexts. And then technical in terms of actually applying that knowledge into particular tasks. And as you can see in each one, there's kind of a highlighted element. So that's attainment, comfort/confidence, understanding, and coding. So those kind of came out as really important and very frequent in this analysis. So I'm going to show you then for the first round what we saw for year 1 and 2, and then we'll take a look at what we saw in the second round as well. So the first round, this data was collected, or these responses were given in the first week, I believe, of autumn term. So that was for both year 1 and 2. So for year 1s, they had just started. They were in the first day or 2 of their degree. And then for the second years, of course, they had just started autumn term. So what you can see is the top 5 sort of most commonly mentioned goals for year 1 and year 2. The thing that I find really interesting about this, of course, sort of understanding comes out on top, and comfort/confidence in using R or doing statistics, also very important. But already you can see for second years, attainment, so getting a particular mark or passing the module, something similar like that, is already quite important, whereas first years kind of don't quite have that on their radar yet. They're more interested in coding and doing research, that sort of thing. So what was interesting for me partly was to see kind of what people are thinking about what their perceptions of what they're going to learn might be in our first round of testing, and then moving on to our second round of testing. So remember, round 1 is beginning of autumn term. Round 2 here is the beginning of spring term, so around late January, early February, so right at the start of that second half of the year. And there's been a little bit of an upset, as you can see. Coding has really jumped to the front for first years, that's the thing they're most interested in, with understanding and comfort confidence still right at the top there. For second years, understanding is still at the top, but attainment is creeping its way more and more kind of prevalently and more of a focus. So you can also see that for the first years, attainment is now in the top 5 on the map, basically. But you can see that there is a difference in the overall prevalence of the sort of focus on attainment. Of course, second years are a little bit more focused on getting a good mark than first years are quite yet. So I just wanted to give you a couple of examples to illustrate what these goals look like. So I've chosen sort of one of each of the 3 or 4 most common kind of themes. So on the left, you can see a response from a first-year student. I'll just read a bit of it. I do love this. I can say that I hope to learn and gain a good understanding of the scientific methods in psychology, as it is regarded by some as a pseudoscience. I'd love to know who some are in this person's life, but I think that's really lovely. They want to know sort of what the scientific applications in psychology are. It'd be beneficial to me to have an understanding of where best to use each form of research methods. And again, something that came up a lot in first-year responses, kind of taking things from A-level and GCSE and then refreshing that knowledge or applying it kind of at a more advanced level. So I really love that response. And then this second one was a perfect encapsulation of what a comfort confidence response looked like. I hope to be able not only to gain knowledge about statistics that I will cherish for life, but also to gain confidence in myself in this field. I currently fear this module as I'm lacking confidence in myself to succeed highly in it. However, I would like to change this. So I thought that was great. So not only to learn more, but also to feel sort of confident in that knowledge. And it sounds like this has been a really common theme in a lot of the presentations we've heard today, that confidence, that sort of faith in yourself and the resilience to keep coming back and keep trying, even when it's really difficult, is absolutely key to success in these sort of topics. So those are both from our first round, again, in autumn term. I have a couple of examples from spring term. So 2 first years, an example of coding. I loved this one because it was great to see that some people are excited about coding. They said, I wanted to learn more about coding as I find it really, really fun and just want to develop these skills for the enjoyment of it. Brilliant, fantastic, we love to see it. And directly next to them in the data set, someone else has said, I want to not panic when I see a formula, which I think is also a wonderful goal to have. That, again, coming back to that resilience and having faith in your ability to interpret those things. So I thought those were both great. And then some examples of the sort of attainment topic. I hope to be able to achieve better in weekly worksheets and see my own improvements, or I hope to earn over 70% and be more confident in my understanding of statistics. So you can see a lot of combinations of, I want to kind of achieve highly academically, but also I want to know in myself that I am making progress and be able to see that progress happening. Just a couple of takeaways for me, kind of having looked at about 500 of these, or 450, I guess. So one of the things that came out of this for me is that building familiarity and confidence is critical. A lot of students mentioned that they felt like they knew how to do things, like they had notes, they could use the tutorials, but they didn't feel like they could do it themselves. They always needed to refer to something or ask someone for help. And they wanted to have the confidence to do it on their own, to be able to go out and write code themselves. And I think especially given that we have a very kind of disproportionately female cohort, that can be a real issue to build that confidence. A lot of students showed a consistent interest in doing research. So for me, that said to me that I want to continue to reinforce applications to show them how the research methods that they are using are relevant to their goals as researchers, or also further on, real life contexts. Again, I know I'm saying the same thing that a few people have said already. I know these are things that come up all of the time, but it was nice to see students kind of articulating that as like a clear goal that they are trying to accomplish for themselves. And finally, for me, slightly sentimentally, I don't know about y'all, but for me, this year was rough in that I felt quite disconnected from a lot of my students, and it was hard to get to know a lot of them. We were still delivering a lot of our sessions at a distance online, and for me, being able to see their responses and get a look at what they are hoping to achieve in their career goals, and kind of the just the focus that they have on learning and building their skills, I found that really wonderful. For me, this is going to be the first time that I've actually had contact with or seen the writing of some of these students, because with these big cohorts, sometimes things just get lost. So I was really happy to actually be able to make some contact with some of those students and to see what it is that they are excited about. And I really want to make that happen. So that's my bit. I am going to hand over to Luise, who's going to talk a little bit about some statistical results.
Hi, so I also want to just thank Mark for organizing and keeping everything on time so far. So let's hope I don't I don't bring that out of balance. And thank you to Jennifer for the lovely introduction and all the praises. So I will talk you through the quantitative side of the preliminary analysis we've been doing. We're going to look at attainment within the first and second year cohort. As Jennifer has already explained to you the setup of the study, I will not go over that again. But just as an overview, we will be looking at a TAP, which is the takeaway paper that we have in the first and second year cohort, which is a worksheet that is to test coding as well as statistical analysis and interpretation skills. This takeaway paper is always due 7 weeks after the questionnaire data that we've used for this analysis is collected, and students have 48 hours to complete it. The other measures we've used in this analysis are first the SATs, which is from the survey of attitudes towards statistics. We have chosen to include the cognitive competence subscale and the value subscale. You've heard before why these two measures are important and do relate to attainment. Further, we've also included the SCAS-U, which is derived from the Elementary Student Coding Attitude Survey. We've adapted it to be used in a university setting, specifically in a non-STEM context. And this is to measure confidence and attitudes towards coding. For this, we have also included the coding confidence subscale and the utility subscale to mirror the subscales we've used and chosen from the SATs. And then lastly, we are including the affinity for technology interaction scale. This one is used to measure the tendency to actively engage in intensive technology interactions. In this case, we have specifically used it to measure engagement with RStudio. So the analysis was done by first removing missing data, any missing TAP submissions. Unfortunately, we couldn't assume what attainment students would have had, and any repeated submissions. We then fit 5 models by the first model including the cognitive competence and value subscale from the SATs, and then adding the other predictors I have talked you through on the previous slide, step by step. We then tested the assumptions and removed any outliers and checked that our models were appropriate. So I'm just going to talk you through the results of this analysis. We can see on this slide here. So on the left side, you can see the results from the first year cohort. We included 304 participants in the end, and the best model we have found was the one including the SATS value subscale and the one for cognitive competence. This analysis showed no significant impact on the TAP grade achieved other than the intercept. So there's no significant outcome here. For the second year cohort, we include 337 participants. We found that the best model in this case was the next model, so the second, which included SATS value, cognitive competence, and coding confidence from the SCAS-U scale. So we found that this, through this model, that coding confidence was indeed significant and had an impact on the attainment in the TAP. We also found that the model would explain 7.42% of the variance in the current data and 6.57% when adjusted to wider population. So according to this, and we've heard this before in presentations such as from Jenny Terry, that self-efficacy and belief and confidence that you can do things, in this case specifically coding, is very important for attainment. So for the takeaways of this analysis, the first thing is that the findings from first and second year differ. So from that, we can now see that when measuring an outcome and a predictor, we do have to keep in mind at which part and which stage students are in their statistics learning or in their degree. So we do need to reassess that all the time and also reassess which needs students have throughout their degree, as those may change. Also to note, this data is from 2 separate cohorts. So with what Jennifer already told you earlier, we are planning on redoing this every year. So with continued data collection, we will be able to track a single cohort and individual students over time, giving us an even better picture of how needs and relationships between certain variables may change. And then lastly, statistics learning is not isolated. So meaning what this whole day has been about, how we teach statistics and what we teach it with, in this case, does have an impact. So empowering students and knowing what they need from the tools and from us is very important. I'll hand back to Jennifer. Thank you.
All right, so that's great. I'm just going to repeat some of the things that Luise has just said, just as a brief summary of what we've talked about. So for me, one of the key takeaways of what we've kind of looked at so far is that confidence is super important. So what was interesting for me was the distinction for students between their knowledge and ability and the resources they had available and their confidence in being able to utilize them properly or create new things themselves that they hadn't seen before. So for me, I'm going to be looking this summer when I'm kind of reviewing and revising my teaching provision at building in activities and ways to give feedback that explicitly reinforce confidence and help students build their independence. I think we've tried to do this a bit already. One of the ways that I think I can build that in, I mentioned our skills labs at the beginning, where we get everyone to come to a lecture theater, but instead of a lecture, we live code and show them sort of how to conduct these analyses. And as part of that, because I'm doing it over Zoom, I often ask questions and let them respond over Zoom or use polls. And I think that's a nice way to build some confidence, because people can respond without having to raise their hands or feel like they have to put themselves on the spot, but just sort of engage with coding in a very low stakes sort of scenario. So I'm going to try to build more of that in to really help them gain confidence in what they can do. So as we said a couple of times, one of the key things that we want out of this is not just to do it once, to administer this questionnaire over sort of 1 year and then be done with it. I'm really keen to continue doing it year on year and see how our students develop in their understanding and their support needs as they progress through their degree. So we are kind of reviewing what's in the questionnaire now and how its administration has worked or not worked, and then how we can support them best at different points, and then continue observing their sort of progress as we go. And The last point is, I feel like I'm gonna, right after Jenny said that she wanted people to work with her, I would love to have anyone get in touch with me. If you're interested in what we are doing, if you'd like to do something similar, this has been a massive project to administrate. Honestly, I think Luise should get at least an honorary PhD for all of the work that she's done on this, if not a master's degree. So it's been a lot of work, but we've learned a lot, and we would be really happy to share that information or work together with you if you are interested in doing something similar with your students to make it easier for all of us. So just do get in touch. My email and both of our Twitter handles are in the second slide, so please let us know. And that's it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So we have maybe a few minutes for questions for Jennifer and Luise, but we're going to transition into the general discussion anyway, but maybe I will just leave the recording running for this talk, and if anybody wants to ask specific questions on this talk, feel free to do so now. And so while we're waiting, I'll ask a question. So this is either to Luise or to Jennifer. You talked your outcome variable in that regression analysis was this takeaway paper. You mentioned what exactly that was, but I just didn't catch all the details. Could you just say again what exactly was involved in that takeaway paper?
I'll let Jennifer answer this
Okay.
since they're the one writing them. So.
Sure. Yeah, so the takeaway papers are new assessments this year. I think this has been absolutely a huge blessing for us to, sorry, I'm in Wyoming, so I'm gonna start saying things are blessings. It's really been wonderful for us because so it allows us on the one hand to have like a very focused kind of R and statistics focused assessment. So it's a kind of, it looks a lot like the worksheets that we give them every week. We give them a data set and then sort of a list of questions and tasks that they have a limited amount of time to answer. So a lot of it is practical. So for example, remove a particular case or create a summary, that sort of thing, mixed in with some interpretation questions. So why is it that this particular number has come out this particular way, or report the results of this particular analysis, that sort of thing. So it's a great assessment, and it's also, I think Jenny might have mentioned, or someone did, that they are also connected to one of our other non-methods modules. So for example, in our first year, we have a takeaway paper that's on, I believe, conditioning in mice. And then for their psychobiology module, they write up the results of that and talk a little bit more about it. So those two things are connected. So what we're trying to do is help them see the connection between what they are doing in R and what they're learning in their methods modules, and then how that actually applies to a specific research field or research context.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. Okay, does anybody else have any questions for either Jennifer or Luise? Well, in that case, what I will do then is I'll stop the recording, but obviously any further questions can be raised in the general discussion, which we'll turn to now.